Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I'm really excited because I have Kat here today. She is a friend and former colleague, and she has built herself an incredible business. And we're really lucky to have her here today to talk to all of the mompreneurs and entrepreneurs who are listening and following along with Grow Like a Mother. So I'll get her introduced. Kat's the founder of KV Marketing, and she's an expert in content strategist. With over 7 years in communications, she's seen numerous marketing campaigns, and she guides both small and large scale businesses to success. She founded her company, KV Marketing, in 2021, and she specializes in crafting unique social media strategies for online-based businesses. So if that's you, if your ears perked up just now, keep listening. This episode is for you. Kat's mission is to help you find freedom through efficient and effective social media marketing, making your online presence as unique and vibrant as you and your business. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to give you moms some tips, and hopefully in the future, you guys can give me some tips when I have children.
Right. We were just talking about that. Kat's getting married and going through all of that planning and the stress that comes with that. And that's actually how we first connected, was in sort of the hospitality and wedding events industry, which is so cool that we've come full circle and we're here now in our new careers. Can you share with everybody sort of the story of that journey for you? Like, a lot of the listeners are either dipping their toes into entrepreneurship or thinking about it, or are a couple years into their business. And I love just sharing stories of success stories of other women who have done it. So share with us your journey.
Well, first and foremost, it was never in the books for me to be an entrepreneur. That is never something I wanted. It's never something that I saw myself doing. But it fell onto my lap. And I think that, long story short, for me, it was really taking a deep dive and just having faith in everything will work out. So I ended up losing my job in 2021. And at that time, I kind of was doing social media on the side. And I kind of told myself, hey, maybe there's a sign here. Maybe we need to just dive in. And at that point, I was making about half of my salary than my full-time job. So I just dove in, and honestly, since that day, have been entirely rewarded for, jumping in, having faith. And I think the big lesson here would be, or my piece of advice for anyone who's starting, is being patient, because it does take time. And I think that most of us lack that patience, and things take time. But as you put in the work and as you do the little steps, it'll snowball into something way bigger and something probably better than you can even imagine. So just keep going.
That's really good advice. I was actually looking back at the podcast in year 3 now, and I was looking back at some of the guests for something I'm working on that I wanted to sort of reach out to past guests. And so many of them are no longer doing the thing that I interviewed them about. Like,
Mhm.
it's incredible the number of people who give up, because
Yep.
they don't realize that it does take a lot of time. And if you can take targeted action like you teach, like
Mhm.
really strategic steps to success, then
Mhm.
you're on the right path. But even then, you got to put in the consistency. You have to put in the effort and keep showing up as you're growing, because it takes longer than you think it will.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to not be tied down to what you think your business will be, because sometimes you get nudges from the universe, from, what your clients actually really want. Like, sometimes we think that our clients need something, but they're telling you what they need, and we can go into that because content plays a huge part in that as well. But sometimes you're so tied into what you think your business is supposed to be. Like, when I started, I was like, oh, I'm only doing social media. But realistically, my business has evolved into something so much more than just social media. And sometimes we limit ourselves because we think, okay, I need to be doing this. But if you're looking at what's happening around you and what signs there are out there, sometimes you're being nudged in another direction. So I think keeping an open mind is also very important.
Yeah, totally. It really is. And you're right that we have to take our lead from our clients and the people who
Hmm.
are paying us and telling us what they need, because they're not shy to tell us, right? If we are just listening. Um, okay, so this is really good. So how does that, so Let me think about this. How do I want to ask this question? For people who are listening and who have an idea of something they want to share or who have started on the journey and they're in this mode of like, well, what do I post? Like, how do I share about this? What does this even look like? How can we start that journey? I guess starting it from the beginning with the customer in mind. I see a lot of
Mhm.
people posting about like, oh, I'm doing this and this is what I do and me. That's not the way.
No. So actually, how we got on this call today was me doing some market research on a new offer that I was doing. And Jill, at the same time, was launching her circle community. And I was like, okay, you're launching. I'm creating something about launching. Let me pick your brain. And this, why I'm bringing this up is because it's a really big piece of the puzzle is doing your market research, not only for your business development, but also for your content. So whenever you are launching something new, or whether it be a business, a service, whatever it might be, you always want to be talking to those you will be selling to because they are the ones that are going to be buying it. So if you're just creating something out of what you want to create and you're not taking into account your ideal audience, then you might very much miss the mark because I might want to talk about apples, but if Jill wants to hear about oranges, then there's a huge disconnect there. And you will miss the mark in your marketing, you will miss the mark in your sales, and it'll have a compounding effect. So, really going back to the basics and doing your market research, sit down with 5, 10 people, like send them a Starbucks gift card. I don't know, whatever you need to do to sit down and ask questions on what they think about your offer, what they expect, what questions they have, how they think. Like I remember one of the questions I asked Jill was, what does that entail for you? Like, what do you think launching entails? So then I have a good idea on what it is that she thinks, because what she thinks and what I know, my knowledge is a lot more advanced than what my ideal clients is about launching. So you kind of need to get on the same page as your ideal audience. So market research is definitely number one.
Yeah. That was such an inspiring call too, to be on the other end of that and sort of see how your process works because I
Mm-hmm.
loved the questions were so thought out and I loved being able to sort of express something. We all love to talk about ourselves, right? So it was
Yeah.
nice for me to be able to share some things but also give value and reconnect and it was a really cool experience. So yeah, market research.
Yeah, and my favorite question for that is always asking, what would you search in the Google search bar? Like, what would you type in if you were searching for my service? And that will give you super important keywords that you need to include in your marketing, that you need to include on your website, all of these different things. So that will give you a really good guideline on the wording that your ideal audience is using that you can then use in your content throughout your campaigns?
Yeah. That's a smart idea. I
It's
mean, just
it's
ask
my
them.
favorite question.
Yeah. And then so how does that tie in, I guess? Um, do you use SEO as a big part of the marketing? Like, in where do we use those keywords once we know them, basically?
So I think your website is a really good place to use it. If you're doing Pinterest marketing, obviously that is an SEO based image search. It's kind of like a Google with images. So
Mhm.
keywords in Pinterest are very important. I do think that they're also important in social media, just not as prominent as if you're doing Pinterest marketing. One thing though for keywords that is really important in social media, let's say if we're talking about Instagram, is the searchable field where your name is. So for you, it's Jill Wright and then something else. That's something else your client needs, like you need to know what your client calls you. So if I'm saying I'm Katya Valaket, a digital strategist or a digital marketing strategist, like none of my clients are going to look for that. They're going to look for content or they're going to look for social media. So you really want those words to be in there so that people can find you.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, cool. And I'm curious to know your thoughts about when we're creating our content. For most platforms, there's two pieces, right? We've got the graphic and we've got the
Mhm.
caption. What's more important? Or do they have to just equally work together?
It depends. I think that equally work together, yes. But I do think it depends on what type of content your ideal client takes in. So if they like taking in reels, will they actually read the caption? Maybe, maybe not. So if you are selling something and you are using reels, you should have your call to action inside of that reel. And if that call to action is to look at the caption, great. But we need to think that the attention span on social media is like milliseconds. So if you're not keeping their attention to the last second where you do have that call to action on your reel, then they're not going to see it. So it really depends on what type of content you're creating, what type of content your ideal client likes to intake, which very much should be connecting. Um, and yeah, just making sure that you're using things like an engaging hook at the beginning. So the very first line of your caption, making sure that it's very engaging to get people to, one, be curious, two, want to read more. So you want to just take in their attention and, pique their curiosity so that they do read more. So there is a fine dance in between both. But I think the really important thing is making sure that you're creating content that your ideal audience wants to consume.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I'm just reflecting back to earlier in our conversation when you said you started out thinking you would just do social media and you sort of more from there. Like a lot of us, when we think about marketing, we do just think about social media,
Mm.
but it's gotten to be this jungle of just lack of attention, and everyone's trying to shout for, their space and all that. And so what are some of the other places that we could be creating content that might get us a little bit more of an attention from the people we're trying to reach? And again, you're probably going to say, hey, it really depends on your people, right? Like
Yeah,
knowing
but
them.
I do think that email is one of the most underutilized platforms. It is direct to consumer, so it's not dependent on an algorithm. It's not dependent, you have that direct connection and you own that list. So for me, very contrarily to social media platforms and some social media managers, I always encourage my clients to bring their followers off of social media, because when we have social media blackouts, we've all seen it, people freak out. You don't own that list. So if Meta decides that they're closing their doors tomorrow, you lose all of that clientele. You will never see them again. You have no way of reaching them. But if you direct them to your email list, then you actually own that list and that list remains yours. So it is very important. And I mean, realistically, if you're posting on social media, why are you posting? You should be directing them somewhere else. You want to direct them either to your website, to, an email list, somewhere where they will make a purchase, because they can't purchase anything on social media. They have to be directed somewhere else. So the end goal is not just engagement, it's really sales.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a sales driven social media manager, and not everyone does it that way, but email list for me is a really big one. The conversion is way higher on email versus social media. If I'm not mistaken, the stats for sales conversions on social media is like 0.5% versus 3% on an email list. So if you're even looking just at, 100 people, that's a way bigger number on email versus social media.
Yeah. When you think
Mhm.
about, like, even just logically thinking about it, your email list, they've asked to be there, right? Like they're a warm
Yep,
audience. They already know you on social media. Yes, you have your
exactly.
followers, but there's a lot of people who aren't as familiar and who haven't raised their hand and said, this is for me, and taken that
Mhm.
step. So if they've already taken a step to opt into your email list,
They are warm, yeah. They're
right?
interested in having that information that you're providing them. And that's a mistake that I did earlier in my business, is I wasn't really taking my email list seriously, and I really wish that I had. So take it from me, start your email list now.
Yeah.
Start working on it. And if there's 10 people on there now, fine. If there's 200, great. If there's 3,000, amazing. But just keep doing that. And the way that you're gonna do that is having a really good lead magnet.
Right. So for people who don't know, can you break that down a bit for us.
Yeah, so lead magnet would be any free resource that you're providing your audience that is in direct relation to what you are selling. So for me, I am selling social media services, or one of the things is social media services. Then one of the freebies that I have is a 30-day content calendar that they can download and, use. It's basically leading people to a free thing in exchange for the email.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think
Mhm.
we're all used to this now. I remember in the beginning days of like online businesses, webinars, right? And we weren't sure. And then the sell at the end came as like a surprise. And now everyone just expects the sell at the end. And the same thing now. It's like a freebie. Oh, I have
Mhm.
to put my email address at the beginning. It's like, well, why? And we're also like, I don't want to do
Mhm.
that. But now we'll like it has to still speak to us to give our email address. However, we
Mhm.
know what that exchange looks like these days. So it's kind of nice to have the consumer a little bit more educated and aware of how we're doing business as online service providers, right?
Yeah. I think it's also important to think like what happens after they download that freebie, right? So there has to be some type of sequence following up, because how many of you have downloaded a freebie and then never looked at it ever again, never
Right.
opened it?
Yeah,
I've
totally.
done it a thousand times. So if you don't have reminders and you don't have it like different touch points. And remember, some of these people this is going to be the first time that they come in contact with you. So it's important for you to introduce yourself, what you're about, and, give some value so that they get a sense of what it's like to work with you within that very first week or 2 weeks that like following them downloading that freebie. So thinking about a nurture sequence when they download is a great way to warm them up even more when they're new on your email list.
Yeah, I love that. I sign up for tons of email lists and half of it is out of curiosity to see
Yeah.
like, okay, how are other people doing it? Like
Hmm.
I'm big on email as well, so I'm always curious. I got an email this morning actually that I was like, "Oh my God, I need like this is
This
like
is gold.
different," right? So you sort of get to know what email feels like as a consumer and keep
Hmm.
that in mind as you're building a nurture flow, right? But I love being in that first few days of a nurture flow and just getting value and feeling like I'm getting to know the person like on a different level than having just downloaded their freebie. So that's such an important piece.
Yeah, because I mean, if they don't know how you work, then the likelihood of them, if you're a coaching person, especially, like the likelihood of them purchasing a coaching package from you is less than likely,
Right.
because they need to get that feel. So giving them value is super important beyond just this free download.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking in terms of creating content for the business on a consistent basis to bring like do we need to have new freebies and lead magnets often? What's the flow of this look like to stay fresh and stay relevant to get new eyes?
I think it really depends on what you do. Um, I think that I think one mistake that people do is creating new freebies all the time and not focusing on the one. Like, it's better to have one really good one than have five mediocre ones and be marketing all of these different things all of the time. So I think that simplicity is best. If you come up with one really good freebie that is based on your market research, that people will want, keep pushing that one out, because as you get new followers, they will see it. And then don't forget that only 10%, about 10% of your people are seeing what you're posting. So repurposing that content and presenting that freebie in different ways is the best way to market it, because if you're kind of diluting your energy on all of these different things, then like it might work, but I think that focusing on one is going to be one less tiring, less exhausting. Like you guys all have enough to do. Creating new freebies every 3 months shouldn't be on your to-do list.
Right. What should be on our to-do list?
Creating content,
Yeah.
but doing it efficiently. So I have three main things that I tell people when they're creating content is one, being organized. And you and I both know that I'm organized from an event planning background.
Yeah.
Organization is super important to me. So organization, getting your shit together. If you are, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss, I'm sorry.
You can. We're all about that here.
Um, So creating a centralized system is really important because if you have notes on your iPhone, you have, your Google Dropbox, you have notes on your notepad and post-it notes, and you come and you sit in front of your computer and you're like, I don't know what to post. It's probably because it's spread out in all of these different places. It's not a lack of ideas that you have, but a lack of organization. And that's one thing that I see with most of my clients and most of the people that I work with is there's a lack of a system. So getting all of that marketing information, the market research all in one place will give you kind of a wealth of knowledge of, okay, what can I post? If you know the frequently asked questions that they ask, if you know what they want to hear about, and you know what your content pillars are, then it's pretty easy to compile and talk about some content. So a tool that I use is Airtable. There's a gazillion tools out there. You can use Asana, Trello, ClickUp, and I'm sure most of you guys probably are using some of these as either CRMs or in some way, shape, or form in your business. But having everything in there will help you create content more efficiently because you won't be looking, okay, where is that one thing that I bookmark? Is it on TikTok? Is it on Instagram? That you're trying to find this one reel that you saw that you really liked, and you lose 30 minutes of your time trying to find that reel. It's not efficient. And that's really the biggest problem. People say, well, I don't have time. No, you're not being efficient.
Totally. I hear that
Mhm.
a lot too. I'm like, no, let me show you where the time can come in. Like literally, that's
Yeah.
what I do. I
Yeah, that's
totally
your
hear
whole
that.
business. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have time. No, no, you have time.
Yeah.
It's usually a lack of organization. And I'm sure that's like one of your biggest things.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So,
Um,
organization, data-driven decisions. So, what we talked about earlier, market research, stop guessing what your people want to hear about. If you're looking at like really good content creators online, you'll notice that they always talk about the same thing.
mm,
They repeat the same information, they repurpose their content. And that's the third thing is repurpose what is already working. So look at your analytics and go see what people are engaging with. And
yeah.
what they're engaging with is what you should create more of. And then repurpose that content. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you're posting on social media. Just simplify.
Love that. Takes a lot of pressure off. Gives us a
Mhm.
lot of guidance too, like a compass in terms of, okay, well, what do I focus on? Just look at your data. Just listen to your
Yep.
people, right?
Yeah, the answers are all there. And, marketers will often use the expression like stop throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Right.
And that's literally just us creating content out of thin air and hoping that it's going to work when your audience is already engaging and telling you exactly what they like. So if there's a reel that did really well, maybe it's the type of content, but maybe it's the subject. So do a little bit of A/B testing and go in and recreate that reel in a carousel.
Right.
If it does well, then it's most likely the content, not how it was made, like not a reel or like the type of content you're creating, but the subject of the content. So do some testing and have fun with it, repurpose some stuff and stop. The wheel is round, keep it round. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, I love that. And like I love making it less complicated for ourselves, especially those of us who either dread creating the
Mhm.
content or struggle with what to post, right? Look, we all have our own story, our own um roadblocks with social media. I think nobody that I know who's in business in an online space loves showing up and knows exactly what they're posting all the time unless they have a plan like you
Yeah.
provide. And can you talk to us a little bit too uh about your content compass, because I feel like this program is really beneficial to pretty much anybody, but it's a lot of it's a lot of knowledge as well as the organization and like all of the tools and all of the socials too. Can you tell us about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I created the Compass essentially to create a system for you guys. It's the system that I use with my clients. It's how I keep all of my clients organized. I create hundreds of pieces of content a month. So if I can do that in a month, I'm sure you guys can come up with 12. You don't need to post more than 12 times a month. 3 times a week is more than enough content. But essentially, it is a place where you create your social media, or your social media posts, where you can see everything from either a graphic perspective, a caption perspective. You have a bunch of different views. You can keep all of your ideas, all of your inspiration, all of your frequently asked questions, all of your market research, all in one place so that when you are ready to create content, you open up your Airtable and you sit there and you just look at your stuff, and you can just say, okay, this is what has done well. Here are some reels that I really liked, because I'm not telling you to go out and copy people, but you can definitely take a reel that you like and repurpose that and make it relevant to your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone does that on social media, and that's a really good way of using what is already working. So having everything in one centralized location enables you to be efficient and simplify your process so that you're not going back and forth in between all these windows. You're not going back and forth in between a bunch of ideas. You can just sit down and get it done. And if you block out, an hour, 2 hours a week, you can get it done.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Like an hour, 2 hours is like way generous. You can do your whole month in 2 hours if you're being efficient.
Yeah. And if you have everything ready in one place, you have like, you know where you're going for it,
Mhm.
you know the strategy. If you've got all the pieces and you show up, you're right. It doesn't need to take
Mhm.
a bunch of time. That's, I think, a huge misconception from people because I don't know. I like the idea of batching it. I really like that because you have to, it's like today, I'm doing, as I shared with you before, 5 podcasts today. I
Yeah.
know I'm doing one thing, right? If I show up for 2 hours and I know I'm just doing social media, I can choose to do my hair or not. I can choose to put makeup on or not. But if I want to do that and I show up, if those things are important to me, then I only have to do that once in the month,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Off I
And you
go.
can break it up too. Like if you're gonna do your makeup one day and you know you're gonna look really good. I don't wear makeup every day. I don't film reels every day.
Yeah.
Batch a whole bunch of that. And then once you're done and you're tired, walk away and then come back and do your captions another day. You don't need to do everything at the same time and exhaust yourself and hate the process. You can do it however it works for you, but you do need to set time aside
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not your priority, and it shouldn't be. Social media is not your priority. You
Right.
have a whole business to run, but you need to set time aside like it was a client meeting, and yeah, just make it a priority.
Mhm. Um, as we wrap up, is there anything that you feel called to share that hasn't already been touched on? Just as I want, if I could have everyone know one thing, like this would be it.
I think I'm kind of in this season as an entrepreneur is like your whole business doesn't need to revolve around social media, but social media needs to be there. We know that it's an important part. So yeah, just take the time to learn how to do it efficiently so you can move on and focus on what really matters in your business. And that's really what my business is about, is creating more freedom for you guys to get back to what's important to you, whether that's in your business or in your life. If that's spending time with your children, amazing. But let's make it more efficient so you have more of that time to spend where it really matters, because you shouldn't have eight hours of screen time a day. It's not necessary.
Right. And like remembering why we got into entrepreneurship in the first place for
It's
freedom.
not to become a social media manager, that's for sure.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, this has been so great. Can you share with everybody how they can learn more from you, how they can follow along by your example and connect with you and access some of your offers?
Yeah, so my platform of choice is Instagram. You can find me at kv.mktg like George. I always mix those up because I'm French. G like George, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Um, and kvmarketing.ca. Same, but without the dot. Yeah, you guys can find me on there. I would love to like pop in, say hello. If you have any questions about social media, slide into my DMs. I'm always happy to help you guys. And yeah.
That's amazing. And we have a little coupon code as well for the Compass, which is great. So if you guys, I'll link it in the show notes, but use the discount code MOTHER and you'll get a nice discount on the Content Compass. And I just want to thank you for being here. You are such like a super connector in my world. I always know if I have a question, you're either going to know the answer or put me in touch with the right person. And so you're just a wealth of resources. I am so honored to be in your world, and I thank you so much for coming on the show.
That's definitely the reflector in me.
Yeah, there you go. That'll do
Uh,
it.
Thank you so much for having me.